Untangled podcast, and I don't know if I've ever voiced this. So the podcast is different. All these different channels on all these different things on Untangled. The reflections are like conversations, things like. But the podcast for me is my baby because in this one we ask actual questions, like actual practical questions, but we're asking one central one, and that is, how do you do ministry in the deconstructed Christianity world? Right? Because that's what I think happened, right? For me, it was 2015. I think that was a banner point, right? Because culture changed, right? 2015, Trayvon Martin, you rolled straight from that into, you know, the Trump polarization of our world. You rolled straight from that into COVID, from that into George Floyd, from that into January 6th, right? So every time one of those things happened, people start being like, I don't know about this Christianity thing. Right. I don't know about God. I don't know about truth. I don't know where I'm at, right? And so they start doing that. And now here we are, right? And
so how would you describe deconstructed Christianity?
Yeah. All right.
The interview.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. I mean, it's an interesting question. I would describe it a different way. So here's what I say. I think deconstruction is looking at God, viewing God, but just differently, right? Right. And so the idea there isn't that I'm leaving God anything, but it is the idea that I need to start viewing him differently. Right. Because in light of what I've seen, the conclusions I've seen people come to in light of following him seem to land on different moral ground.
Got it.
And so
that makes sense to me, you know, because I like watch Cooking Network, right? So I like to cook. And so like a deconstructed BLT on the plate would be like you have the bread here and it's open face, and you have lettuce on this side, and tomatoes here, and the bacon's on the side. It's a deconstructed BLT. All the pieces are still there.
All the pieces are still there.
Nothing ever left. All the flavors are still there. They just are in different places. So you look at it differently. You may eat the bacon with the lettuce first. You may eat the tomato with the bread over here. You're approaching it, but all the pieces never left.
And I've been using the Lego example, right? So I think of Legos, and here's what I think happened, right, is I think, here's how I imagine the scenario. I imagine that we took the pieces of Christianity. Jesus is real, the Bible inspired, we put them all together, and we put them together in the shape of a plane, right? And so it was easy. You could fly over the United States. You could land right somewhere and talk to people, and then you get in your plane and fly over. Right. But then the country started developing. So now people live in cities. Yeah. So you can't land your plane anywhere, right? In my mind, you should then land your plane, take the pieces, put together a tank, and drive through the streets, right? Because
all terrain,
it's same pieces, right? But you got to do them differently.
Absolutely.
And that for me is the reconstruction part. And I don't see people reconstructing. I do see people deconstructing, but I don't see people reconstructing. And that's
I like that because in deconstructing Christianity, it's an opportunity to take the labels off of things.
Yes.
You know, so I used to pastor Paseo Baptist Church. Now I pastor Colonial Presbyterian Church.
Oh, we're going to get into that.
Yeah. We're just in names of the title themselves, they create barriers from people who want to know about this Christianity, because I work with this dude who's always smiling and he's always happy, but I know he drives a hoopty and he lives in a broke down house. Yeah. And I hear him say Jesus all the time. So there's something about him I want to know about, but he goes to Colonial Pres or Paseo Baptist. And so there's a hurdle that keeps me from wanting to ask more about that.
Yeah. And that's that right there, right? That right there. And that alone lets me know you're listening, right? I didn't get to my last one, but I've been finding that as I think about it more and more, I find that a lot of people, it feels like, are more interested right now in giving truth than it being heard, right? Because in order for it to be heard, you have to kind of know something about who you're talking to.
Absolutely.
And that's why I'm asking a lot of people. I'm like, have you talked to anyone? Because if you've talked to anyone, you would know you can't really say, right, if you want them to hear it.
Well, the thing about it is, who are you to have the right to tell me something? You know what I mean? Like, what have you done to earn the opportunity to tell me anything? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, my wife would say, you know, you need to cut the yard. Well, it's almost 25 years of marriage and relationship building, and it's like, you know what? If I want to be happy tomorrow, I better cut the yard. Yeah. You know what I mean? But said person off the street, which is, you know, how even evangelism is kind of changing in a sense.
It
because
should,
it's like,
right, yeah.
you know, you coming to me and just begin to thump me with something that you haven't earned an opportunity to share with me can really create more barriers.
And now has, right?
Yep.
Because what's happened is all of those events I mentioned, a lot of people watched where a lot of the Christians came down, and what they decided at the end of it was Christians aren't moral. Right, before we had a moral authority, right? I remember dudes used to drive down the street, and if they drive by the church, they turn the music down.
They put the cigarette down on the side or whatever.
Because it had a moral authority. They thought, oh, those are moral people over there. Right. But at this point, it actually works the opposite. I was in a store, and I was talking to a dude on the phone, and I said to the dude on the phone, I said, hey, man, I think you're about to say I'm not a Christian, and that's going to break my heart, right? Because we were having a debate. Yeah. Right? That wasn't the part. That alone bothers me. But here was the worst part. The dude next to me in the store, he ain't know me. He don't know nothing. He goes, I don't know why. It's never good when the Christian's around. That's what he thought.
Wow.
And I'm saying that's what happens in this world right now. You go out there. I rarely lead anymore now. It's funny because I've been a pastor before, but I rarely lead with Pastor West anymore. Yeah. Rarely, right? Yeah. Because right now people aren't convinced. Right. That Christians are moral.
Right. You the title pastor is almost a detriment.
Yeah.
You know, like
it's a gap you now have to jump over. Yeah.
Like with my son's baseball teams and sports in my neighborhood, you know, I just started being nice to people.
Yeah.
You know yeah. It's like Greg is the dugout dad because he keeps the boys in there, you know, controlled, and in the stands, the dads are talking to me about issues they're having with their sons, and I'm just having conversations with my neighbors. You know, how are you guys doing? Just checking on them. Over the course of months and even years, it's like
they find out you're a pastor.
You're a pastor. Like I figured you were a Christian. You know what I mean? Because your love.
And then in some cases, you see almost a cognitive dissonance in their mind.
Yeah,
they're like. But you've been kind to me.
Yeah.
You've listened to me, and right. My boy works in diversity, equity, and inclusion. He's a pastor. He's a pastor in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah. And so he'll go in there, he'll be working with people and be loving on them, and then they'll find out he's a pastor, and they'll be like, he says he's like, I see their brain breaking.
Right, the little
right, yeah, like how, how, bro?
All of the pictures I had of pastor in my head don't match what you have right now,
right?
Which is funny. So yesterday, we were driving. No, that was this morning.
Okay, all right. Okay.
This morning, me and my wife driving into work. You know, we had it was an accident on 435, so we had to be derailed to I-35. You know, going through downtown. We would hate going through downtown, but so we're driving, and it's this big white Cadillac in front of us, right? Like the boat Cadillac.
Okay,
At 1990.
Okay, old school. Yeah. All right.
Just floating. And I look on the back, and he has a bumper sticker that says Pastor White.
Okay.
You know, Pastor White. And I was like, the fact that you have to tell people.
I know.
Like at the front door. Like, I don't want you to know that about me. Because in a lot of cases, too, like you stop being yourself.
Right.
Like this is what I witnessed is with being around my son's family and friends. And as soon as they find out you're a pastor, all of a sudden now it's like, oh, I got to watch what I say. Oh, excuse me, pastor. Oh, excuse me. It's like, dude.
And thus,
just be yourself.
And because of that, what they think is, I can't talk to you about the real things I'm struggling with. I can't because you're a pastor. And that's the world we live in. And I think you've done an amazing job, and this conversation's done an amazing job of framing. That's the world we live in,
Absolutely.
Right now. Now, let's get to the real deal here.
Let's talk to them.
Right?
Yep.
In that world, I'm going to just tell you, in that world, your situation is one I'd love to know more about because you're a black pastor.
I am that.
Of a church.
Yes.
Called Colonial.
Colonialism.
Colonial.
Yeah.
And the church itself is primarily white, right? And
93%.
And in the world we live in, a lot of non-white people think that white Christians are racist. Right? I'm just that's the reality, right?
Reality.
Now I know as soon as I say that, everybody's gonna jump and be mad or whatever. But the truth is, in the world we live in,
especially after January 6th,
right? A lot of non-white Christians or a lot of non-white people think that Christians are racist.
Yeah. So
then they would say, he's pastoring. Yeah. So tell us about it. Yeah.
So talking about deconstructing, right?
Right.
So when the Lord put it on my heart in October 2017, and it was actually August of 2017. Like, it's time to do something different. You know, I got my release.
Has it been that long? I didn't
It
know.
was. I'm in my 7th year at Colonial now.
I was under Pastor Ealey as his youth pastor at Paseo. That's what I didn't.
One
So,
of the best highs
I didn't know. I didn't know it had been that long. Okay, all right, I'm back.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
but in August of 2017, you know, going through all of that we went through, I felt like the Lord said it's time to do something different. And so my reality of myself, my constructed reality of myself, was that I'm a Black Baptist pastor.
Okay.
You know,
yeah.
My dad's a Black Baptist church pastor. My mentor's a Black Baptist church pastor. Like, that's all I ever been. That's all I ever will be, you know. And I was praying, and I felt like God said, you are not a Black Baptist church pastor. You're my son, and I can do with you whatever I want to.
Okay. All right. Broke that whole thing.
So
Yeah.
Constructed the whole thing, right? And so then I was like, well, then what do you want me to serve? You know, and I just Googled church jobs in Kansas City, because that's what you do when you don't know what to do.
Oh, yeah. You just Google it. That's what you do.
And Googled church jobs in Kansas City, and Colonial Presbyterian campus pastor came up for the Warnell campus.
Okay.
Because we had one on the Kansas side, one on the Missouri side. And I chuckled for a moment, because I was like, that's funny, you know.
That's not where I'd ever see
that's
myself.
good. No. And then I felt like the Lord was like, yep.
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
And the testimony story of it is that, you know, I text the lead pastor there, me and him been friends, and I text him at the same time as the pastor search committee was presenting an elders meeting, and he got my text right as they was talking. You know, it was like, hold on, Greg's available, kind of a deal, you know. And so it took all of that. I mean, the goosebump testimony of when I sent the text.
All of that,
And they begin that elders meeting in a season of repentance. They were repenting over the sins of racism and elitism and separation, segregation, all that stuff they were part of. And he said that we feel like that opened the door for God to allow you to send that text right in that moment. So it took all those pieces, Wes, for me to be convinced I was supposed to go there, because this is at the time a 99% white church.
Yeah.
I'm a Black pastor, been in Black
Baptist pastor
my whole
That's
life,
who
right?
You know,
So it was good going in. I mean, it was great. The honeymoon is always great, right? And then in 2018, when I go back, I remember my first Sunday at Colonial. I was sitting on the front row, and I think it might have been like Bluegrass Sunday or something like that.
Bluegrass Sunday.
And I'm
that would have been a challenge.
Yeah, it would have been a challenge. And I was sitting there, and I was like, okay, God, if this is what you called us to, you know. But after being there a while, so in April the 4th, 2018 was the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King.
That's true. Yeah.
And so I was asked to preach a message in honor of Martin Luther King that particular Sunday before the actual day. And I preached a message called He Had a Dream. And my thesis was the he I'm talking about is Jesus. In John chapter 17, he dreamed and asked, Lord, I pray that they are one as we are one.
Yeah.
You know, and MLK just picked the baton up and carried that, you know, because I was hearing kind of little rhetoric from places like MLK was this and he was a glory hog and you know, he wanted the limelight, all these kind of things. And so having to map it out that this is a directive from Jesus himself.
Yeah.
Therefore, we as a church have to walk into this space. And then from that, having a group of people come alongside and say, we want to know more. And we started having conversations and eventually led to a ministry that we formulated and had some, like, what are the main things we want to do? We want to make people aware, you know. Now, mind you, at this point, it's me and there's probably 5 other Black people at Colonial.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So creating spaces for people to learn, you know, that means these 5 Black people, I say, hey, I'm going to need you to tell your story a bunch of times.
That's
you
tough.
know,
And that's tough.
Because it's hard to tell the story.
It's hard to tell the story, and it's hard to tell the story that's the part that's the part I find really challenging is is not only are you having them do the story and do this, the world is dramatically changing as this is happening. I mean, racial issues are rising. We're having the Black Lives Matter is rising. Blue Lives Matter is coming around. All of that all lives matter is coming along all at the same time that this is happening. And so,
dude, man, I'm just saying so much stuff. Trying to break it down. So that following year, 2 years later, George Floyd, February, I remember it's February or March around 2020 or so, whenever, like that whole season in there, that was rough.
I believe it. I believe it was really rough.
It was real rough because, I'm not always 100% accepted in all spaces because I'm in this world and I understand this world, and I'm in this world and understand this world on the right and the left. So I would be in meetings throughout the day, and the same day I'm in a meeting where we're talking about defunding the police, and I'm in another meeting that afternoon where we open in prayer by thanking God for saving us from Hillary Clinton.
That's an interesting dynamic.
And walk in that space and having to find out, God, where do you want me to navigate these two worlds? Because neither one of them are talking to each other, and somehow you have me in great relationships with both of them. So I feel like there's a purpose there. But
can I stop you there? Because
Please
that part right there is the part. So there's a part that I can't put my finger on that is it's been really frustrating me with everything going on in our world right now, and you described it perfectly. To me, real ministry right now feels messy.
Absolutely.
Right? It feels messy. Now, it's beautiful.
Yes.
But it feels messy, but it feels like not everyone, it feels like a lot of people still think it can be pretty.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, they still think, and I'm trying to tell them, I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this.
Right.
Right? Pretty is, I'm going to walk you through the Romans road. And I'm like, bro, that doesn't happen.
Right.
And partly because,
it's any relationship you have like that, it has bumps and bruises in it that allows for success. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to have the opportunities to roll around in the mess so that when the other stuff comes, you're prepared to lean into that space. Ministry is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
All right, so all right. Now I'm gonna do a few things. All right, roll with me just a little.
I'm rolling with you, bro.
Roll with me just a little bit. All right, so here's because you're bringing up a lot of. All right, so I'll go back to the messy part first. Then I'm gonna go into the part that you just said because I think that part is beautiful too. So here's what I think. I think that when you're in relationship with people, you will recognize. The Truth put out this video, and I've been sending it out, where he points out that the questions that people are asking have changed.
Yeah.
But if you're not talking to anyone you don't know, right?
Right.
So I was talking to my boy the other day. He's like, "Hey, Wes, people are still out here debating whether it's a literal 7 days." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "But what they don't understand is if you step outside of wherever you're at, whatever door that is, if you're at seminary, church, whatever, if you step outside, the person outside they're not debating literal."
Right.
Creative. What they're debating is, should I read Genesis? Right? You know what I mean? And that question is messier.
Yeah.
Right? Because literal or not, I'll show you, here are the facts. Here's my but should I?
Yeah, read Jonah.
Right, yeah. It's kind of like, it's really messy.
Right.
And I feel like what people think you can still do is give real clean answers.
Right.
Right. You can go to that person outside and be like, God created the world in 7 literal days.
Yeah.
And I think they feel really confident.
Right.
And I'm like, that's not what that person asked.
Right.
And had you asked that person, you would know that's not even what they're asking.
No.
So what are you talking about? Right.
What are you trying to bring to the conversation? I mean, that and with ministry and, and working with people and so one of the things, so being in all-white church
Mm-hmm.
in a 85% black school district.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
In a church called Colonial.
In a church called Colonial.
Yeah.
And we are charged of reaching our
neighborhood.
Jerusalem.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, you're charged. Yeah.
But your Jerusalem doesn't look like the demographic that's on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, you begin, because you hire, a youth pastor to come in and some other people to come in and specifically have the job of bringing those people in the community.
The people inside aren't ready yet.
They start bringing them in, and the people inside aren't ready yet. So now the question becomes, who's our target audience? On Wednesdays or certain events, is our target audience our community kids or our existing members? Because that would determine what you offer and what it looks like on a Sunday morning. And you have fathers,
and it's different,
who are questioning whether they want their daughters around these black men.
I know, and that's tough. And then, right, because that puts you in a really tough space. It's like, because then the stuff actually, depending on who you're targeting, will dramatically change what you talk about, right?
Absolutely.
Right? We can jump straight in to Acts if I'm talking to the people who are already here, believers, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm talking to the people in my community in this deconstructed Christianity world, right? I'm in this world, right? And I come in and I say, all right, we're going to talk about the Holy Spirit in Acts today. They're going to be like, yo, man, what are you talking about?
I'm not here for the magic act.
They be like, no, I need food. Right.
Exactly.
Like, I need.
And that's the thing about it is one of the, so I've been there 6 years. I'm in my 7th year now. And you'll appreciate this, I believe. You saw me preach at Paseo Baptist Church.
I did.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I come to this predominantly white church with this teacher and his teaching style. Mm-hmm. And probably up until about a year ago, I tried to be that for the congregation.
For their sake, yeah.
Because I thought, this is what they wanted. Because this is what they, needed, which, our lead pastor, Pastor Jim, is a great teacher.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I came in thinking that I needed to be Pastor Jim in the pulpit. And I would constantly get people saying, I don't know. Actually, I had one of my, real, true, good friend, when they tell you and they don't care what you think when you say it.
Yeah.
My real good friend, Kent, had me and my wife over to dinner at his house. And he said, Greg, I preach more black than you do right now.
Okay. All right.
You know what I mean? And but he was saying is that, I've seen you in your element.
Yeah.
And you not, because I was trying to be what I thought they wanted me to be, when in actuality, what they want me to be is who God made me to be. And over the last couple of years, I've started incorporating my own style of preaching into the opportunities that I get. Yeah. And that's when I start seeing more people of color starting to kind of flow in. And, we went from 99% to 93% because when I'm on stage and up front, they see, okay, that's the guy I see at the Easter egg hunt.
Yeah. Yeah. They see the relationship.
Right.
And I bet by the nature of you being more, because I just know you already from this conversation, you're listening, so you know what they're actually looking for answers for.
Right.
And that is a bit different. That's what I'm finding, right? I'm finding that the things people are looking for answers for are turning out to be slightly different than what we think they used to be.
Right.
And I think that's the nature of this deconstructed world, and you in that role feels really interesting there. And Nate has waved me to let me know that we're coming to it. So I'd love to know maybe final thought that you would really just kind of love to share about that. I've loved this conversation. I'd love to keep doing it. Yeah.
Well, I would say this. I think what God is doing right now, especially around, what just happened with the shooting and everything. I honestly feel like over the last probably couple years, I got a list on my phone of all the contacts I have in Kansas City. I just felt led to put it down.
You told me,
And I said, God, what do you want me to do with this? And then the other day when that shooting happened, the next morning, there's a group of 15 leaders in the city that automatically start jumping into action and saying, hey, we can do this, or we can do that, we can set this up. And I said to them, that group, I said, this is the culmination of 15 years of work of us building together to show the city that the church can do it. So I'm just glad that we are in that space, and that even though I'm a I've been a black pastor of all black church, a black pastor of all white church, but God has allowed me to be in those spaces to see him move in white and black people and everybody in between.
That's beautiful. And I'd love to have you back because I think you made just a profound statement.
I would love
there.
to come back.
And it just said, and your profound statement was, the church can do it. A lot of people don't believe that in the church and out right now. But the church can do it.
Church can do it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks, Pastor. And for the record, thanks, Reverend Dr. Pastor E. Because
I do got a dissertation.
You got all of it. Yeah,
you want to read it. You need some sleep material.
Thanks for being with me today, man. This was great.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Nate.
Thanks, Nate.